Easter. To millions around the world, it represents the resurrection of Christ. But if you look closely at the rituals, the flowers covering sacred biers, the women weeping through the night, the midnight processions winding through darkened streets, you are witnessing something extraordinary. You are seeing shadows of a much older world, echoes of ancient voices that still resonate through our modern celebrations. The way we mourn and celebrate today has roots stretching back thousands of years before Christianity, that the emotional landscape of Easter, with all its sorrow and joy, connects directly to the festivals of ancient Greece. We are going to explore the ancient roots of Easter by examining three powerful connections: the festival of Adonis and its ritual mourning, the laments of women across millennia, and the figure of Orpheus, who became a bridge between the pagan and Christian worlds, the Adonia. This was one of the most emotionally intense celebrations in the ancient Greek world, and it was dedicated to Adonis, the beautiful mortal youth who captured the heart of Aphrodite herself, the goddess of love. Adonis was killed by a wild boar while hunting. Aphrodite, devastated by the death of her lover, mourned him so deeply that Zeus took pity. He allowed Adonis to return from the underworld for part of each year, making him a god of cyclical death and rebirth. Sound familiar? Summer. Ancient Greek women would celebrate the Adonia in a ritual that looked remarkably similar to what happens today during Holy Week. They would create what we might call a funeral bier for Adonis. They laid out statues or representations of the dead god, covered them entirely in flowers and aromatic plants, and then carried these flower-draped biers through the streets in solemn procession. The parallels to the modern epitaphios are stunning. In Greek villages today, during Holy Friday, women spend the entire night decorating the epitaphios, the symbolic bier of Christ, with thousands of flowers. They weep for the dead god just as their ancestors wept for Adonis over 2,000 years ago. The floral decoration, the communal mourning, all of it echoes across the centuries. But there is more. The women of ancient Greece would plant what they called the gardens of Adonis. These were small pots filled with quick-growing seeds like lettuce and fennel. The plants would sprout rapidly but die just as quickly in the summer heat. These gardens symbolized the brief, beautiful life of Adonis himself. They represented the fragility of life and the certainty of death, but also the promise of return. Now let's talk about the women themselves, because they are the true keepers of these ancient traditions. In the Adonia, the festival was led entirely by women. They would climb onto their rooftops as the sun set. There, visible to the entire community, they would wail and beat their breasts, crying out the ancient lament. Their voices would fill the air with the words that echoed through Greek streets for generations. Adonis is dead. This was public communal mourning that brought the entire city into the emotional experience of loss. This tradition of women's lamentation, called the moi roloi in Greek, never truly disappeared. It evolved, adapted, and found new expression. Today, during the Epitaphios service on Holy Friday, Byzantine hymns known as the Epitaphios Thranos are sung. These are some of the most emotionally powerful pieces in all of Orthodox Christian music. And at their heart is the same figure that appeared in the Adonia, the grieving mother. In the ancient festival, it was Aphrodite mourning her beloved Adonis. In the Christian tradition, it is the Virgin Mary mourning her son, Jesus. The mother's grief, raw and universal, forms the emotional center of both festivals. The connection is not coincidental. It reflects a deep human need to process loss through the voice and presence of women, the givers of life mourning death itself. The direct address to the dead, the questioning of fate, the expression of unbearable loss, the community of women supporting each other through shared tears. This is cultural continuity at its most profound. Orpheus. You might know him as the musician who descended into the underworld to retrieve his dead wife Eurydice. But Orpheus became something much more significant in the early Christian imagination. In the first centuries of Christianity, artists faced a challenge. How do you depict Christ in a way that makes sense to people steeped in Greek and Roman culture? Interestingly, they often did not show Jesus as a king or judge, at least not initially. Instead, they depicted him as a young shepherd playing a lyre, surrounded by peaceful animals. If you look at early Christian art, particularly mosaics and catacomb paintings, you will see this image repeatedly. A beautiful young man with a lyre, sometimes surrounded by sheep, lions, and birds, all listening peacefully to his music. This is not originally Jesus. This is Orpheus. Why Christians use a pagan figure to represent Christ? Because Orpheus embodied qualities that perfectly illustrated Christian theology. He was the master of death. He was the hero who descended into Hades, the Greek underworld, and returned. His music, his words, had the power to tame wild beasts and move stones. He represented the triumph of divine harmony over chaos and death. Early Christians saw in Orpheus a perfect metaphor for Christ. The image of the Good Shepherd playing his lyre became a bridge between the pagan past and the Christian future. This was not theft or plagiarism. This was cultural translation, using familiar symbols to explain revolutionary new ideas. Even the smaller symbols of Easter, like the red eggs that are central to Easter celebrations in Greece and other Orthodox countries. These eggs represent new life, resurrection, the breaking forth from the tomb. But the egg as a cosmic symbol of life and creation existed long before Christianity. In Orphic mystery religions, there was the concept of the world egg, the cosmic egg from which all creation emerged. The egg contained the potential for all life, all being. When early Christians adopted the egg as an Easter symbol, they were tapping into this ancient understanding of the egg as the ultimate symbol of life emerging from apparent death. And what about the holy fire? The light that bursts forth at midnight on Easter Saturday. This dramatic transition from darkness to blazing light mirrors the structure of ancient mystery religions. Initiates would be led through darkness, through symbolic death, and then suddenly brought into brilliant sunrise or torchlight, representing spiritual rebirth and illumination. The pattern is always the same: descent into darkness and death, a period of mourning and waiting, then the explosive return of light and life. This is not just Christian theology, this is the human experience of winter and spring, death and renewal, translated into sacred ritual. So what does all this mean? Does knowing these ancient roots make Easter less sacred? Does it diminish the Christian message to see its connections to older traditions? I would argue the opposite. These connections make our traditions more beautiful, more profound, because they reveal something essential about human nature. We have always needed ways to process grief. We have always needed rituals to mark the death of winter and celebrate the return of spring. We have always needed stories of descent and return, death and resurrection. Faith changes, religions evolve, gods are reinterpreted. But the human heart remains constant. Our need for meaning, for community, for hope in the face of death, these are eternal. The flowers we lay on sacred biers today connect us to women who did the same thing 3,000 years ago. Their tears and ours flow from the same source. So this Easter, when you see the flower-covered bier, when you hear the laments, when you witness the midnight light breaking through darkness, remember, you are participating in something far older and more universal than any single religion. You are joining the endless human chorus that has always sung of death and life, darkness and light, mourning and joy. You think, does knowing these ancient roots change how you see Easter? Does it make the tradition less meaningful or more profound? What's your thoughts? This is Lessons from Myths of Ancient Greece.